We're at the Wings of the North Air Museum today. Join us, follow Phil through the museum. It'll be epic.
Other World War II aircraft. But the field has been here for ages. Was here during World War II and was a flight training school in the 60s for Vietnam veterans and things. At that point in time, it was the third busiest airport in the world. Yes, there was one in Florida and then Chicago O'Hare.
Wow.
More of a Minnesota-based, focused museum.
Okay.
You'll see. And I'm assuming you guys have flown in and out of Minneapolis Airport.
Oh, yeah.
You lived in Minnesota all your life?
Yep.
I was gone a couple of years, but yeah.
But you flew in and out?
Yeah. Oh yeah, a lot.
So you would be familiar with what's above you?
Spirit of St. Louis?
Yes.
Yep.
And that is the one that would hang in Minneapolis Airport. We have, it has been in storage for a number of years, and then yes, we are now the caretakers of this movie prop. It was a movie prop. It was used in the movie The Spirit of St. Louis with Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
But it is a prop. If you zoom in on your motor, you'll notice that it's not quite really a motor. So, four deals are the helicopters out of St. Paul. There are 2 airlift wings at Minneapolis Airport, and then the fighter squadron is out of Duluth. You are latching on to the one of the highlights of the museum. It's a Bush Stearman, as we call it, but it's a Stearman. It's a Navy version, so it's the N2S, not a PT-17.
Okay.
But it happened to be flown by a president, George W. Bush. It flew twice before moving on, and he flew it out of this field here. That looks just like this. We should look for an autograph to see if you can. Feel free to find us there. So what happened is that it is signed by Hugh Rodney signed it. That little funnel once they found the records of the
And the instructor could talk to you like this, and this other then connected into here, so you could almost hear what he was saying.
so this is a fabric one, and
Open cockpit.
a PT, a primary trainer such as this, is a very docile plane. It has fixed wheels, so no retractable wheels. It's got a light motor, it's powerful enough for the plane, but it's not overly powerful. It's not a huge power of a propeller that will take and change the attitude of the airplane. Mr. Bush ended up going on and flying what's called a turkey, or a bomber type of plane with 3 people in it, himself, a gunner, and a bombardier. So that had a much larger engine, had stuff that he needed to learn. This was one of his first ones. He wore every piece of clothing he had to fly this in January.
Ooh.
It is completely open. There's no heated seats. There's nothing. Nine astronauts that have been to space from Minnesota. There are also a number of companies within Minnesota that support the space industry. So we like to highlight those: the Redstone, the Mercury, the Atlas, the Titan. Those are all really to scale comparably. The Saturn 1B gets in there, and then the 5B does not do, is not to scale.
Okay. Wow.
And then and we show the single Mercury capsule, the Geminis, and the actually it's Apollo there, three folds. And these are all 18th scale models on the top of these display cases. Yeah, we have some other ones. There's a historic crash in Minnesota of a B-52, just in Invergrove Heights. Seven of the 8 perished. I don't know the year off the top of my head. 58. So 52 that crashed. These are all World War II type of equipment. So you've got a lot of, all of these things would need to be used, they get abused, and they need to get repaired in the field as well.
Sure.
My grandfather actually would repair a lot of these, and he talked about being in the Pacific and having to go to a downed aircraft, strip the stuff while the Japanese were stripping them, and then P-51s would be in low cover. And we had been bombed in a surprise attack on December 7th.
Okay.
And that was the date which would live in infamy. We needed to find a way to get back. So April 18th of 1942, less than a year later, we launched 25 B-25s off of the USS Hornet, or as President Roosevelt said, Shangri-La. They got as close as they could, but they didn't get as close as they wanted to. So the mission was thought to be a suicide mission by Jimmy Doolittle himself, because it was pretty much a one-way trip. Off the carrier, over Tokyo or other targets in Japan, drop your bombs, and get to China. And that had to be in China that was not occupied by Japan. In order to get there, you had to lighten the aircraft. So this top one is a B-25, indicating and showing the aircraft that was taking off of this aircraft carrier. In order to do that, the engines had to be modified for ability to deal with power and added fuel. Those modifications were done in Minnesota, in St. Paul. So every one that took place, every one of those aircraft that took place in that raid was here at one point in the state at one point in time.
Wow.
We also had a B-24 modification center. B-24s were famous because they came off of Henry Ford's line. And Henry Ford was very adamant because the military came to him and said, "We want you to build aircraft for us." It's like, okay, no problem. And then they wanted him to make changes to those aircraft on the line. And he's like, no, absolutely not. You want aircraft. You want it in the speed. In order to do that, I'm going to set up a line. If you want to make changes, you do them after. So any modifications that were done to the 24s were done later. Yes, that. Yep. And then the only aircraft that was actually made during the actual war that was in the state was a glider. So inside the diorama is a copy of the glider. If you go to Fagan Fighters Museum in Grand Falls, there's about half of that is the body of it and one wing sitting out in one of the hangars. They are absolutely massive gliders. They were flown by people that might not have been the best pilots. Because they would have been, if they were great pilots, they would have probably been in the plane above or in fighters or other bombers.
Sure.
So you may not have wanted to get into a glider, but they were made here. This is one of the, in a Pacific outpost, because we were island hopping and we were trying to move fairly quickly. So you would set up a temporary outpost like this on your island, and this would be your control tower to allow planes in and out. You're going to be very rudimentary. It's hot as can be. If it's raining, it's more of a monsoon and a cyclone than a rain. So you're built for heat, keep it open, keep it aired, avoid the sand and the bugs and the animals. also other instruments. Our pride and joy in this case is a Norden bomb site. So when you're bombing Germany, you would have hundreds upon hundreds of B-17s flying to a target. But you might only have 4 with a Norden bomb site, the one on the right there, the big one. Only 4 would have that. So if the leader did get taken out of commission, had to return to base or something like that, one of those other 3 would fall in and lead. All the other bombers are waiting for that first primary bomber to drop their bombs. That's the signal for drop. But that was the most accurate bombing device. It took pressure, winds, and things. What you're looking at there is a Link trainer.
He's so little.
It is a little. It is designed to teach pilots to fly by instruments alone. It's a very interesting part because everybody was participating in the war. Link is a maker of bellows for organs, so that you need air to make a reed organ go. So they had the bellows, and they made the bellows for it, and so this actually runs off of air to change your pitch, your yaw, and your pitch, yaw, and your attitude. So it goes back and forth. So there's four there, and then there's a motor down below that really does change your rudder positions. On the outside, there's a table that has this little trolley here, which is following along with the assumed speed, direction that the aircraft is going, so that the instructor can see that the student pilot that's in there is going to the right direction and going to pit. So if you're trying to send somebody on a 300 mile cruise, you want to make sure they either get to the right airport or get to the right bombing site. This is how they practiced and learned how to do that without spending enormous amounts of fuel or anything. You could just spend a few hours in the trainer. It's a little electricity that goes, not thousands of hours on your aircraft being done, because you're training thousands of pilots through the system. You're weeding out those that can't do this. You're saving a lot of wear and tear on engines and aircraft.
Did you guys get anything when the first shut down? Now it's where the Vikings are.
Okay, so that was the where they would have had the trainers for the Delta.
Yeah, it was Northwest. Yeah, and then it switched to Delta. Yeah.
No, nothing that
You got to go in one of those. It was not that small. Not in.
as an explorer.
That was the first flight.
Isn't it crazy?
And I always ask our guests, is it flying into the wall or is it flying into the museum?
Into the museum.
You are correct. Most people get that wrong, because they think of the tail as of the horizontal as the tail of the aircraft.
Yeah.
But it's not. It is flying in here. Displays of military attire. That is what's actually happening right now, with aircraft coming out of the South Line and this airport.
B-29 Super Fortress.
I used to use flight alert.
And you're Vikings fans?
Oh yeah.
You've ever been in that stadium?
Oh yeah.
You have. I was there once, but it was for a baseball game. But in that stadium, during the winter of 68 or so, 65, they were doing stuff to promote the St. Paul Winter Carnival. And so Mom would get into the basket And the idea was that she would go up, tethered 50 to 100 feet up. She'd be tethered and she'd wave to the crowd and stuff. Well, it was really cold that day, and the balloon just wasn't getting up. So I figured, well, we need to lighten the balloon. So her 11-year-old son hopped in. He'd been flying balloons with her before, so it wasn't unusual for him to hop in. So he's like, yeah, I can get in. And they had him hop in. He'd go up, he waved to the crowd, and it got up a little bit, and then it started coming back down. Then I gave it enough gas to get it up again, and waved at the crowd, and he's sitting there going, a little higher than I think it should be. Look down, 11 years old. Look down, and no tether. He is free. He goes through the lights that are hot as can be as well. The balloon passes through the lights and goes into the gloomy, stormy afternoon and disappears. Now, we all know where Met Stadium is, and we all know where Minneapolis Airport is. He's got no lights in this thing. He's got no warning lights. He can't give a signal to a plane that might be nearby. He knows he's got to get down, and he knows how to fly with it. So he does what he needs to do. He lands in the Minnesota River. He is off by a marsh. That day, somebody happened to be taking photos of wildlife in the area and got this photo of him after he swam through the slush to get to shore. There's no cell phones.
Rig touchdown.
So they have no way of
Then
telling mom
started
and dad,
to
hey,
ascend once
kid's
again.
okay when he gets back to the stadium where they get him warm and hot chocolate and stuff. 3 hours later, his mom and dad are back at the stadium finally after having been found out there looking for him. We got the kid. He's back. He's safe. But he's cool. Yes, they did. But,
Is that him?
that is him. Yes, years later. That's a recent addition to our collection, and it's a great cutout of how a motor, a rotary radial engine works. It's not a rotary, it's a radial. This is the master cylinder. So every other cylinder is mounted, or cylinder rod is mounted to this rod. So it's a master rod, and if you had two banks of them, there would be another master rod in the other bank as well. But you can see they're offset to get the turning of the propeller at the center.
That's cool.
Yeah, you don't fire sequentially, so it's not 1, 2, 3, 4. It is a bit of an odd, every other one kind of thing.
Okay.
As you're going around, because you've got the sock squeeze blow.
Okay.
Deal. So you're going to be, one of them's going to bang, the other one's going to be clearing and prepping the cylinder for the next time around. You'll notice there to the museum is this bird dog. It's an 01. It did serve in Vietnam, and then in the Japanese Air Force for a little while. Normally you'd have a observer in the back. You would have had somebody from South Vietnamese Army in there. The rockets on this are not the kind that go boom. They're the kind that put out a lot of smoke.
Okay.
So you'd fire these into the canopy, into the jungle, and let the smoke emanate. The smoke then, the spotter in the back would then tell the fast movers, i.e. the jets, where to drop the bombs.
Okay.
So you would have this smoke. I need ordnance 500 yards to the west of the smoke, and they come in and they drop the bombs that way.
Okay.
you get in on the other side, you'll have a better
View?
on the other side.
Okay. Oh yeah.
Let me help you out.
Wow. God, they're so little.
The 1927 Dodge Brothers, before Chrysler bought it out, so it is Dodge Brothers. It is fully functional, works, goes in parades. It's been owned by one family its entire time.
Wow.
It was bought by the museum director's grandfather just a few days before Lindbergh went on his flight from here, from the U.S. to Paris.
Wow.
So this automobile is the same technology that was around when Lindbergh flew. Just so that it gives everybody a perspective, because we're used to our cars and all the fancy gadgetry that it's got now. This one, a small little 4-cylinder engine, doesn't have a whole lot on it, just enough to make things go. There's no air conditioning, there's none of the fancy stuff. When you look at this thing, look at the floor boards.
Ah, they're wooden.
They are literally boards.
Is that original seats in it too?
Original seats. And you get a very nice back seat to the whole contraption.
Wow, there's a lot of room.
No space for your groceries though. Unless you put them in front of you. Yes. Sweepstakes. For $50, you could have a chance to buy an airplane or have an airplane. Yep. So we're looking for our next year's sweepstakes plane, and we'll hopefully do the same thing next year. We try to raise about $40,000 for the museum through a sweepstakes. So this one, I didn't know it was still here. I had heard that it was on its way out. The gentleman that got it is from out west. He and his instructor are going to fly in, and then they're going to fly this thing hop, skip, jump back to his place, and by the time he's there, he should have his tail wheel endorsed.
Wow.
So if you get your private pilot license, you normally get it in a tricycle gear aircraft these days. To fly one with a tail gear, you need to have a special endorsement. And that's why it's special. But if you want to, you could learn to fly in a plane like this too. This is called the Cessna 140. It's small, from just the tail end of the World War.
Okay.
So were these donated and then they're actually?
This one was not donated. This one was purchased. But then, and then it's not auctioned. It's Euro fixed.
Okay.
It's still docile. Right now, you're going to see it looks really incomplete and open. Remember, you're not just training pilots, you're training mechanics. So you need quick access to repair this thing. This thing's getting on all the time by all kinds of
Up on the top shelf, you see that orange
pilots
cylinder?
that do and
That's
don't
actually
know what they're
the
doing.
1960s, the drone
So they need to
that was used to
repair this. It looks like AT-6, but it's not quite advanced training for old. How to fly this supposed to replace a hinge on the back because the thing could break off in flight. And so that's being updated and taken care of. They working here Saturdays from 7 to noon. Some Wednesdays are working. This is just here to protect from tools dropping on it or something like that. It will be removed once we go to but this was typically flown by female pilots because this is not a trainer to learn to fly in. This is a trainer to learn to bomb in or to shoot down other aircraft. So if you go to the front of this aircraft, you'll see a nice glass front bubble that mimics a bomb bay or a bombardier section of a B-17 or a B-25. It's not exactly the same. It's just a replica of the type of thing that they're going to have to do. So you have a bomb site in there, and you drop bombs from this aircraft. Right next to the aircraft, you can see the gunner station that would be mounted in the mid section of the aircraft, and so the gunner would be able to shoot down or shoot at another aircraft, a drone of some kind, an aircraft towing a drogue chute that you would shoot at the drogue and not at the plane. A lot of times people miss. One of the unique features, there's just one of these in here. One of the unique features is when you get up to altitude, you lose 3 degrees per 1,000 feet. So when you watch these war films, B-17, that's -7. Not a lot of any nice amenity.
Is it like below 50%? What do they have to see?
There's the wings to the plane.
Okay.
Wow.
That's why you this aircraft we are trying to sell. This is jump seats. One from a B-52, another from a F-86. In a B-52, you've got a couple that actually go down instead of up. And then this one out of the F-86 is out of the F-86 that's actually on display in Lakeville. That F-86 is over as a little tarp type thing over it. Yep. That's the sun just a little bit. Dummy bombs. Mostly filled with paint or powder to indicate where it landed. And then we have a series of artworks highlighting various facilities.
Very cool.
F-16 pilots, A-10 pilots in the States. Our airport, our museum director, who went forward to
And on travel.
that one?
The May West?
Yes.
Yeah.
The guy gave up his patent to allow people to have the May West at the production volumes that they needed to.
Okay.
He would have made a fortune. He was from Minnesota, and they were used for mostly for protecting and wading in the streams and rivers.
Okay.
And it wasn't normally it was black. They wanted it yellow, so to be seen, and so that was a different color and request.